Hello, my name's Kristen and I work at HOPS on the training and support team. Today I have my colleague Vanessa here with me today. She is a software developer who works on our question builder tool, and we are excited to meet with you today to walk through our question builder tool, the functionality, and how you could use this tool to create math questions. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, as a reminder, within your HOPS instructor gradebook, you can find the Question Builder tool on the Assignments tab under Question Builder. Here you can create different folders to house your questions within. So I recommend creating these folders based off of different topics, or maybe if you're creating questions for a particular test or a quiz, you can name the folder after that test or that quiz so that you can more easily find it. We have two folders already created here, but to create a new one, we'll click Create in the upper left, and you can give it a name. Maybe you're creating questions all for test 1. So we'll create a test 1 folder. To create a question within that folder, make sure you have the folder selected and then click the Create button here. Now I'm going to give a pretty brief overview today of our tool. This tool can do a lot. We use it internally to build questions up through calculus, including all of our tutor components, but I will show you that you don't have to use all of those components. You can use this tool to create very simplistic questions. And I am doing a brief overview, so if there is anything further you'd like to learn more about, don't hesitate to reach out to your training and support representative and we'll get a further training scheduled for you. So once you've clicked the Create New Question button, you're brought to this landing page here, where up at the top you have a toolbar where you can insert an image. We have made an update here to this page where, in addition to the alt text here for any students who might be using a screen reader, you can also add in a description. So if you'd like to add further information about what the image is, you can add the information here, including a table and special characters. You can include the URL for the image, or you can choose to upload the image from your computer. You can also add in a table where you can choose the type of table you'd like to add from this drop-down menu here, add in row and column headers, include a caption and a summary, and you can choose to include a copy data button. What this means is there would be a button on the student side that would show copy data. If a student selects that button, it would copy the data so that they can easily paste that into, say, Excel to do the calculation. You can insert special characters into your questions. You can also create dynamic questions, so you don't have to have just a static single question. You can have up to 50 iterations. So we would click Variable Manager here, where we would give our variable table a name. It can be as simple as variable table 1, or you can make it more specific if you're creating a graphing question or an adding fractions question. You can name it after the topic, whatever helps you find that variable table easily. And then you can simply enter your values here into the cells. So for this example, let's just keep it simple and we'll do 1 plus 1 equals 2. Let's say that's our question. And then for the second iteration, we want 2 plus 3 equals 5. Maybe 4 plus 3 equals 7. Now, if I'm not going to have any other iterations, I'll want to remove the rows from the end. We don't want any empty cells. If I had any empty columns, I would want to remove those as well. You can add additional rows and columns here. Or if you wanted to do the calculations in Excel, you can always copy and paste into the variable table here, and the columns and rows will adjust automatically for you. Then you would just save your iteration table so you have it when you're creating your question. Expression Builder here allows you to enter your expressions into the box so that it will display accurately within the student courseware. So as I enter my expression here, you can see the preview below to make sure it's displaying as it should. This one is very simple, but we do use LaTeX, which is a programming language you may be familiar with, but if you're not, we do have a wiki documentation link here that walks you through how to code any of that LaTeX language you might not be as familiar with to create the type of question you're looking for. We do have shortcuts up at the top here for anything that is most commonly used. This way you can more easily enter what you're looking for and see the preview down below to make sure it displays as you'd like. Graph Builder allows you to build graphs within your question statement and answer choices. And Vanessa will actually touch on this more when she gets to building the questions for you. But you'll see here from the dropdown that you can add various shapes such as points and lines and the variety of other shapes down below. And then you have other standard formatting options that you can see here. So down below, you have a question header that is optional where you can add in directions, tables, images that students might use for, say, a multi-step question. This is optional and you don't have to have this, but you would just click edit here to add that in. You do have to have a question statement. So this is a required component where you would use Expression Builder to enter your question statement here. And then from here, you can always highlight your values if you wanted to use your variable table to make this question dynamic. So right now we just have a static version, but we can highlight the first value here, choose our variable manager, and replace it with column A. And then we'll replace our second value with column B. And now the final step here for our multiple choice question is to enter our correct answer. So maybe answer 1 is going to be our correct answer. We'll choose the Expression Builder here again, do the variable manager, and insert variable column C. Now we'll want to define this answer as the correct answer at 100% credit. You can enter additional answer choices below. If you ever wanted to give partial credit for an answer, you can do that here. And then you can delete out any answer choices you don't like or don't need for multiple choice by selecting this trash can icon. You do have to have at least 2 answer choices for multiple choice. You can also toggle over here to checkboxes if maybe there's more than one correct answer for the type of question that you're building, where the student would check the boxes for the correct answers. You do have the option here as well to have a specific explain error for every incorrect answer if you choose. Again, this is not required, it's totally optional, but it is here should you like to add that in. From the multiple choice dropdown here, you can also move over to free response. So if you'd like to have a free response answer choice where students would type their answer into a box, you could enter that here. So if your correct answer is 4, or again, if you're using your variable table, you can insert your column C as the correct answer. And again, you can give partial credit for any additional answers. So we have our first answer here at full credit. Maybe you want to add another answer box and give 50% credit for some form of an unsimplified answer. Additionally, you can add a second text box. So maybe you're asking students to enter an X and Y axis where they need to enter both answers to get the correct answer overall. You would want a second text box here for your one answer. You can choose how to evaluate your question. So our default is expression. If you click the question mark icon here, you'll see the other options that you have and how those would be evaluated. And then from the drop-down menu, you could choose which one fits your question best. If you ever have questions on what types of answers would be counted correct versus incorrect or improper, you can click the training documentation here, which pulls up a really handy guide of examples of what would be defined as correct and accepted alternate correct answer, incorrect, improper, or unsimplified. From the drop down here, you can choose open-ended. This would be where you enter a question statement and students would enter their answers into kind of like a free response box, but it would not automatically be evaluated by our system. You would go back to review the students' test questions once they've submitted their test through your instructor gradebook and give them credit based off of their answer. Students on their end would be notified that they do have an open-ended question on their test and that they'll receive their overall test score once you have evaluated. So for any of the questions that you create, you can add tutor options here in the upper right. So you can add a hint, a solution, a general explain error, so not a specific, but just overall, maybe pinpoint some areas where students could have gone wrong, and a step-by-step. If you're creating a multi-step question, you would add another step over here. So say that you're happy with your question, you have saved it, and you're ready to create another question. If that question will be created within the same folder, this is a newer feature we have here where you can create a new question directly from this page versus having to go back to the question bank page to open the folder and add a new question within it. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Vanessa, who's going to demonstrate how to build a few graphing related questions.
Thanks, Kristen, for going over the basic things that Question Builder can do. She definitely just did a quick overview. There are a lot more things that you can do. So if you are interested and have any questions about that, definitely feel free to reach out about it. As she said, I'm really just going to be showing you Graph Builder and more specifically circles. We've had Graph Builder for I think a little over a year now. It is our biggest, newest feature for Question Builder, and more specifically, Circle is the newest feature. So I've already created a sort of simple question just to save time. As Kristen mentioned, we have our question header here that is optional. I went ahead and filled it out with what is the radius of the circle. Again, just a super simple question. And this will appear for all steps. I only have one step for this question, but if I had 5, what is the radius of the circle would appear for all of those, whereas my question statement is a bit more specific to each step. And I double clicked to open this graph builder that has already been created. But if you do want to create a new question, a new graph, for instance, if you wanted to add another step, this question has already been assigned to a lesson, so I cannot add another step. But if you wanted to and wanted to have a whole different type of circle, you could just click the graph builder icon in the toolbar and it will bring up a graph builder modal from scratch, so there will be no previous information in there. So editing the circle I've already created here, we have a center and radius. Well, I'll take a step back and just show you the basis of Graph Builder. You have your Shapes tab, your Settings tab, your Graph XML tab. The settings is really just like the way that your graph looks. You can change the intervals. Let's make this 5. So it made sure that there were less lines. I don't like the way that looks, so I'm going to change it back to 1. You can change your labels. You can change your title, teaching graphs. It's really just the way the graph appears to you, appears to your students, anything that kind of helps build your graph, essentially. You are limited to our user interface here. We've done our best to give you every possible field that you would want to fill out via settings and via shapes. We are still working on adding more shapes as they come up, and I'll come back to that. But Graph XML, if you do know this language, you are able to come in here and edit this, even if you don't know and you just like using this sort of stuff better. You can edit here and it'll update your graph as so, but that does take some more behind the scene knowledge. So if you don't have that, that's perfectly okay. You're still able to build graphs without knowing XML at all. So just some shapes. Kristen already pointed this out. We have our curve shapes and then our point and line polygon. And then again, we have circle. So just to show you that circle user interface, most shapes kind of have the same look and flow. We have these very descriptive fields, whether you want to show things or not, like label. Do you want to have it be a different color? Let's see, let's make this red. So when I save this, you'll be able to see that in just a second. But for here, I have a center and radius circle defined by. There are 4 different ones. The default is equation. I do have an endpoint and radius example I will show you here in a moment. But just quickly showing you a center and radius graph circle. It also is dynamic. We have variables here. So when I click on this and double click it, it does bring up my variable modal that I've already inserted, and I can make edits and save here. If you don't already have a variable, or if you want to enter just a brand new variable, you can click in any field and click the variable manager icon here in the toolbar, where it will bring up the variable you already have, but you can also create a new variable if you want. So yes, this is a dynamic graph, and as you can see off here to the side, this here is sort of, you have 2 different ways to go through your variable iterations. You can either click the drop down and click, or you can click through the arrows and it will toggle between what your different iterations look like, just to give you an idea of what your graph is going to look like. And again, just because you have 2 selected here, when you click OK and insert the graph, it's not going to remain 2 when you're on the preview page, which I'll show you in a moment. You can click new values, it'll show those new values. When you're on student portal, it will show those different iterations. So right, I clicked here. I have a point. I have my point currently hidden. I did this because I felt like it would make the question a little more complicated for the student. Like so, the center, I'm assuming, is right here, and then you count over. So they kind of have, for the student, they have to count all of these little lines and then divide it by 2 to get that radius. So I have that hidden, but if you want to set it to show, you can, and you can definitely change up the styles of that point. And all of these are really up to you and your discretion. So I just really entered random values into my circle. I've already gone through what the different 4 iterations of those circles look like. When I went ahead and changed the color here. I do want to quickly point out that this point is of type center, and this is a center and radius circle. So there are a couple different types of points that you can have for circle. And if I were to click endpoint, for instance, and click save, I will get validation because it is a center and radius defined by circle. You have to have a point of type center. So we kind of help the user have graphs that will render correctly by providing that validation before they save it, and figure that out for them. So once to save that, as you see, I changed the color, so the circle's no longer blue, it's red. And that's really, again, just display to your discretion on what you want them to look like. If you have several different circles on a graph, you could have one red, one green, and sort of ask different questions about that. What's the radius of the red circle? What's the diameter of the green circle? And things like that. So then I click OK. Again, I added this graph into my question statement, and made it a free response type. So I just entered my variable column C because that is all the radiuses for that variable. I'll just go ahead and save this. I have to confirm because, like I said, this has already been added to a lesson. So it's just letting me know that it is going to change that for other lessons. And then another just a quick example of a circle. Here we have a semicircle. Again, you can just sort of make graphs however you want. They're all pretty. Question builder and graph builder, we do our best to make them have the possibility for you to do whatever your heart desires, and make that a possibility for you. So this is an example of endpoint and radius. You have your points table, 3 different points. They're all 3 required. It defaults with the first point open. A little hard to see here because of the variables. But they all have variables in their field. Again, they have to have, this is a type center with endpoint radius, you have to have 2 endpoint points and 1 center. So this is center, this is endpoint, and this is endpoint. As you can see, our center is hidden in our graph here. You can't see the center point, but you can see the 2 endpoints because they're set to show. They're also set to style open. And that is that, along with the radius, all of which are in a variable that have been added. Again, you can flip through these and see what your different iterations will look like. I'll just click OK. This is also a free response type with the domain and range. And I think that covers all of the possibilities in which you could do with Graph Builder. I just show you quickly what the preview for that looks like here in Question Builder. Sorry, I blinked for a second. So I went back to my identify the radius question and I clicked preview, which you may, if you're familiar with Question Builder, you may have noticed that the preview now opens in a modal. Previously it opened on a new page. We added this functionality so that it's easier to go between editing the question and previewing the question when you're creating questions. And again, here if you click new values, it will update and you can see your different iterations for a circle. And this is ideally closely what it will look like in Portal to the student. So I will now show you what these questions look like to the student in Portal. But before that, I just want to quickly touch on how to add these questions that you've created in Question Builder. So in the Assignments tab on Gradebook, where you would go to Question Builder to create your questions, is also where you would go to create your test in WebTests, and then just create new, let it load. And then to get to your instructor created questions and folders, you go to Question Bank and click on Instructor. You have your different folders here that were created. Kristen's folder that she just created is here. And then you just click on your questions and add them, or you can multi-select and drag or add. And then you just save that with the proper name that you want. And lessons and curriculum work the same way. Back in the Assignments tab, if you click Curriculum, you click the proper math section that you want to add these questions to, and then the proper lesson that you want. I've already added the questions that I want to show you today to my lesson. But again, this is what the user interface looks like. To get to your folders and questions, you go to Instructor Created. And then it defaults to the first folder, which had no questions, but then you just click the folder that you want and add them and then save. And then finally, it takes us here to Student Portal. So this is the SemiCircle domain and range question that I briefly touched on, showing you guys. If you answer this incorrectly, I'm just going to put like 4 here, 3 here. It's definitely incorrect. Also incorrect format. So let's try doing it incorrect with the proper format. So it just marks it wrong. Well, we'll do that on the next one. We'll just do the correct answers for these and show you how that marks correctly, and then try similar so I can show you. Oops, sorry about that. So for this one, the correct answer is 3-7 for the domain, and the range is 1-3. Okay, I just have to use the keypad for this to insert this 1-3. Close that, submit the answer, and it's been marked correct. You can also try similar. So this was a dynamic graph. So if I try similar, I get different iterations of that. And then if I again do, I don't know what the correct answer for this is. So it should mark it incorrect. And then 4, 8, submit. incorrect format. Right. So it'll tell you if it's incorrect. And then the next question, skip that one. The center point and radius. This seems like it has 6 in here, so the radius would be 3. Let's try similar actually, so you can see that again. Try similar. It's now updating my different iterations. And then if I put 2 in here, I do believe, yep, try similar. This is incorrect. Submit. Perfect. And I think, and so that's what it looks like on the student portal. And I do think that that is all we have to show for today. If you have any questions about anything question builder related, feel free to reach out to your training and support representative, and they should be able to get your questions answered. But we really appreciate you taking the time out to watch this webinar, and we hope that it was helpful. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.